welcome back. Today we'll be finishing our final chapters in The Golden Key and 22 additional essays by author Emmet Fox. Starting with chapter 20, Treat the Treatment. Spiritual treatment is really knowing the truth about a given condition. There appears to be something wrong, someone is sick, or there is inharmony, or perhaps lack. But instead of accepting this, you remind yourself of the truth. This reminding oneself of the truth is a very powerful treatment, because in this way we do not try to wrestle with the evil, but we know that it is not there. The truth about life is that all is perfect, utter, unchanging harmony, because God is the only presence and the only power. As a student of metaphysics, you know this, and often merely reminding yourself of it brings a quick and beautiful demonstration. Of course, there are, however, so-called chronic cases in which the student, despite all he can do, seems to make no progress. I have known some obstinate and long-standing difficulties to be overcome by the following method. Give one final and definite treatment for the difficulty in question by reminding yourself of the spiritual truth concerning it. And then do not treat about the problem again, but treat the treatment, whenever you feel inclined to. Do this by claiming that the treatment was a divine activity and must be successful. Claim that God worked through you when you gave the treatment and that God's work must succeed. Insist that your treatment being a divine activity cannot be hindered by seeming difficulties or material conditions. Give thanks for its perfect success and mean what you say. This is, quote, treating the treatment, unquote. And you may do this as often as you like. It has none of the disadvantages that are apt to arise from treating the problem itself too often. Treat the, quote, because, unquote, when you find yourself thinking that your prayer cannot be answered for any reason whatsoever. Treat that reason. When something says to you that you cannot demonstrate, quote, because, unquote, treat the because. When you think I cannot demonstrate because I have not enough understanding, treat for understanding. When you think I cannot treat because I have a demonstration because I am full of doubts, treat the doubts. When you think I cannot demonstrate because it is now too late, treat against the time illusion. When you think I cannot demonstrate in this part of the country, treat against the space illusion. When you think I cannot demonstrate this thing because of my age, treat your age belief. When you think I cannot demonstrate because someone else will hinder me, treat the belief in a power other than God. No matter what name the because may give itself, it is still your belief and limitation. Be loyal to God and know that He and He alone has all the power. Treat the because. End of the chapter. Chapter 21. True prosperity. In the scriptural sense, prosperity and prosper signify a very great deal more than the acquirement of material possessions. They really mean success in prayer. From the point of view from the soul, success in prayer is the only kind of prosperity worth having. And if our prayers are successful, we shall naturally have all the material things that we need. A certain quantity of material goods is essential on this plane, of course, but material wealth is really the least important thing in life. And this the Bible implies by giving the word prosperous its true meaning. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. To be poor in spirit does not mean in the least the thing that we call poor-spirited nowadays. To be poor in spirit means to have emptied yourself of all desire to exercise personal self-will, and what is just as important, to have renounced all preconceived opinions and the wholehearted search for God. It means to be willing to set aside your present habits of thought, your present views and prejudices, your present way of life if necessary. To jettison, in fact, anything and everything that can stand in the way of finding God. One of the saddest passages in all literature is the story of the rich young man who missed one of the great opportunities of history and turned away sorrowful because he had great possessions. This is really the story of mankind in general. We reject the salvation that Jesus offers us, our chance of finding God, because we have great possessions. Not in the least because we are very rich in terms of money, for indeed most people are not, but because we have great possessions in the way of preconceived ideas, confidence in our own judgment, and the ideas with which we happen to be familiar, spiritual pride born of academic distinction, sentimental or material attachment to institutions and organizations, habits of life that we have no desire to renounce, concern for human respect, or perhaps fear of public ridicule, or a vested interest in a worldly honor and distinction, And these possessions keep us chained to the rock of suffering that is our exile from God. The rich young man is one of the most tragic figures in history, not because he happened to be wealthy, for wealth in itself is neither good nor bad, but because his heart was enslaved by that of money, which Paul tells us is the root of all evil. Why was not the Christ message received with acclaim by the ecclesiastics of Jerusalem? Because they had great possessions. Possessions of rabbinical learning, possessions of public honor and importance, authoritative offices as the official teachers of religion. And these possessions they would have had to sacrifice in order to accept the spiritual teaching. The humble and unlearned folk who heard the Master gladly were happy in having no such possessions to tempt them away from the truth. Why was it in modern times when the same simple Christ message of the immanence and availability of God and of the inner light that burns forever in the soul of man once more made its appearance in the world, it was again, for the most part, among the simple and unlettered that it was gladly received? Why was it not the bishops and deans and moderators and ministers and presbyteries who gave it to the world? Why was it not Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard or Heidelberg, the great broadcasting center for this most important of all knowledge? And again, the answer is because they had great possessions. Great possessions of intellectual and spiritual pride, great possessions of self-satisfaction and cocksureness, great possessions of academic commitment and of social prestige. The poor in spirit suffer from none of these embarrassments, either because they have never had them or because they have risen above them on the tide of spiritual understanding. They have got rid of the love of money and prosperity, of fear of public opinion, and of the disapproval of relatives or friends. They are no longer overawed by humanity's authority, however august. They are no longer cocksure in their own opinions. They have come to see that their most cherished beliefs may have been and probably were mistaken, and that all their ideas and views of life may be false and in need of recasting. They are ready to start again at the very beginning and learn life anew. Thank you. That's the end of the chapter, True Prosperity. Next chapter. What is scientific prayer? Scientific prayer, or spiritual treatment, is really the lifting of your consciousness above the level where you have met your problem. If only you can rise high enough in thought, the problem will solve itself. This is really the only problem you have, to raise in consciousness. The more quote-unquote difficult, which means the more deeply rooted in your thoughts, is the problem concerned, the higher you will have to rise. What is called a small trouble will yield to a slight raise in consciousness. What is called a serious difficulty will require a relatively higher raise. What is called a terrible danger or hopeless problem will require a considerable rise in consciousness to overcome it. But that is the only difference. Do not waste time trying to straighten out your own or other people's problems by manipulating thought. That gets you nowhere. But raise your consciousness and the action of God will do the rest. Jesus healed sick people and reformed many sinners by raising his consciousness above the picture they presented. He controlled the wind and the waves in the same way. He raised the dead because he's able to get as high in consciousness as is necessary to do this. To raise your consciousness, you must positively withdraw your attention from the picture for the time being, the golden key, and then concentrate gently upon spiritual truth. You may do this by reading the Bible or any spiritual book that appeals to you, by going over any hymn or poem that helps you in this way, or by the use of one or more affirmations just as you like. I know many people who have secured the necessary elevation of consciousness by browsing at random through the Bible. A man I know was saved in a terrible shipwreck by quickly reading the 91st Psalm. Another man healed himself of a supposedly hopeless disease by working on the one affirmation, God is love, until he was able to realize something of what the greatest of all statements must really mean. If you work with the affirmations, be careful not to get tense, but there is no reason why you should not employ all these methods in turn, and also any others that you can think of. Sometimes a talk with a spiritual person gives you just the lift you need. It matters not how you rise, as long as you do rise. Quote, I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. End quote. End of chapter. That brings us to our final chapter. Title of the chapter, You Can Alter Your Life. There is no need to be unhappy. There is no need to be sad. There is no need to be disappointed or oppressed or aggrieved. There is no need for illness or failure or discouragement. There is no necessity for anything but success, good health, prosperity, and an abounding interest and joy in life. That the lives of many people are full of dreary things is unfortunately only too true, but there is no necessity for them to be there. They are there only because their victims suppose them to be inevitable, not because they are so. As long as you accept a negative condition as its own valuation, so long will you remain in bondage to it. But you have only to assert your birthright as a free man or woman, and you will be free. Success and happiness are the natural condition of mankind. It is actually easier for us to demonstrate these things than the reverse. Bad habits of thinking and acting may obscure this fact for a time, just as a wrong way of walking or sitting, or holding a pen or musical instrument may seem to be easier than the proper way, because we have accustomed ourselves to it, but the proper way is easier nonetheless. Unhappiness, frustration, poverty, loneliness are really bad habits that the victims have become accustomed to bear with more or less fortitude, believing that there is no way out, whereas there is a way, and that way is simple: to acquire good habits of mind instead of bad ones, habits of working with the law instead of against it. You should never put up with anything. You should never be willing to accept less than health, harmony, and happiness. These things are your divine right as the sons and daughters of God, and it is only a bad habit, unconscious as a rule, that causes you to be satisfied with less. In the depths of his being, man always feels intuitively that there is a way out of his difficulties if only he can find it, and his natural instincts all point in the same direction. The infant, as yet uncontaminated by the defeatist suggestions of his elders, simply refuses to tolerate inharmony on any terms, and therefore he demonstrates over it. When he is hungry, he tells the world with a confident insistence that commands attention, while many a sophisticated adult goes without. Does he find a pin sticking in some part of his anatomy? Not for him, a sigh of resignation to the supposed will of God. It is really blasphemy to say that evil or suffering could never be the will of God, all good, or a whine about having any luck, or a sigh that what cannot be cured must be endured. No, the defeatist view of life has not yet touched him. His instincts tell him that life and harmony are inseparable. And sure enough, that pin is located and removed, even if everything else has to come to a stop until it is done. But, quote, the shades of the prison house begin to close about the growing boy, end quote. And by the time he is old enough to think rationally, the race habit will have trained him to use his reason largely in the inverted way, and refuse to tolerate anything less than harmony. You can have prosperity no matter what your present circumstances may be. You can have health and physical fitness. You can have a happy and joyous life. You can have a good home of your own. You can have congenial friends and comrades. You can have a full, free, joyous life, independent and untrammeled. You can become your own master of your own mistress. But to do this, you must definitely seize the rudder of your own destiny and steer boldly and firmly to the port for which you intend to make. What are you doing about your future? Are you content to let things just drift along as they are, hoping like Mr. Micawber for something to quote-unquote turn up? If you are, be assured that there is no escape in that way. Nothing ever will turn up unless you exercise your free will and go out and turn it up for yourself by becoming acquainted with the laws of life and applying them to your own individual conditions. That is the only way. Otherwise, the years will pass all too swiftly, leaving you just where you are now, and if not worse off, for there is no limit to the result of thought, either good or evil. Man has dominion over all things when he knows the law of being and obeys it. The law gives you power to bring any condition into your life that is not harmful. The law gives you power to overcome your own weaknesses and faults of character, no matter how often you may have failed in the past or how tenacious they may seem to be. The law gives you power to attain prosperity and position without infringing the rights and opportunities of anyone else in the world. The law gives you freedom of soul and body and environment. The law gives you independence so that you can build your own life in your own way, in accordance with your own ideas and ideals, and plan out your future along the lines that you yourself desire. If you do not know what you really want to make you happy, then the law will tell you what you want and get it for you too. The law, rightly understood and applied, will save you from the danger of what is called outlining, with all its risks and limitations. The law will endow you with the gift of what is called originality. Originality is the doing of things in a new way which is better and different from anyone else's way. That is the end of our book. Thank you so very much for reading. I look forward to having you join me again for our next selection. Thank you, and have a wonderful and beautiful day.